This is the third video in a series that I am doing on the dangers of Botox and what to know about injecting Botox before you do it, ideally, so that you are fully informed and understand that there is real risk. So in the video today, I want to go deeper into some of the details around actually what happens when you inject Botox. So I listened to a fabulous podcast with, and I will link that, but the podcast had a guest. His name is Ray Chester. He is a civil trial lawyer, and he has been involved with cases against the maker of Botox, Allergan, and been the most successful with awarding in these cases, the victim actually getting awarded. So this, a lot of this information came from the podcast, and very, very eye-opening. I had no idea until I understood from what he has learned and what he knows from, literally going face to face with the maker, and also defending people who have been victims of very serious injury and even death. So definitely, if you're interested in checking that out, I will link up the podcast so you can take a look at that. But I want to start with really what Botox is, and I know that I mentioned this, perhaps I think it was the last video, maybe also the original video with my story, but Botox is the most lethal toxin on the planet. It is specifically a neurotoxin, and it is also a biological weapon. It was used in the Gulf War. Actual war veterans were immunized against it so that they would not be affected by, I think it was Saddam Hussein that was using Botox as a biological weapon. It is 5,000 times more lethal than sarin nerve agent, and 1 gram, which is not very much, can kill 1 million people. We're talking very, very deadly toxic stuff here. So when you break that down into the dosage that you are given when you are using Botox, whether it's for cosmetic use or medical use, what it is measured in is units. So units is a bit of an obscure measurement, as I understand. It is not a measurement like volume or weight. And so oftentimes it can be misunderstood by doctors in general. So just to give you a illustration of specifically what a unit is and how that terminology came to be, I want to talk about this interesting fact that Ray Chester brought up on the podcast, where the units are actually known as mouse units, and they are broken down actually into lethal dose units. Okay, so LDs. So LDs is actually a toxicology term and toxicological term, meaning lethal dose. So how they came to that is in 50% of mice that were injected on average, that's how much Botox it would take to kill that mouse. So if you are getting, let's say, 50 units of Botox, it is enough to kill 50 mice. So that is actually the way that these LDs are broken down. And what happens specifically when you are injected. So and it is the responsibility of the doctor or the injector to actually mix up the Botox when they are going to inject you. So they're taking very, very small, like nanograms, obviously given on how lethal this is, and creating a solution that then is injected into wherever that part of your body may be. So if everything goes right, the injection is going into the small muscles of the face or wherever. And what happens is that toxin destroys the neuromuscular junction and creates a dysfunction, so that then it's like paralyzed, right? So if you've ever experienced Botox, you know that feeling of that. It's like it feels like your face is frozen and paralyzed in that area. So one of the questions that I was asked, and is very common, and I totally did not understand this, again, so I did not understand, and it is not known how long Botox will stay in your system, because I think that the assumption is, as you know, with Botox, you have to get it done every 2 to 4 months because it wears off. So there's this assumption that if it's wearing off, that it's no longer in your system. What is actually happening is that the nerve endings are regrowing in that region, and then you're reestablishing that connection. So then you go back in, you get injected, and that actually again destroys that that neuromuscular connection, and then you go back to having that appearance. However, the Botox that you originally had done, it's not known if that's still in your system. So if it gets into your bloodstream, and that could be by the injector missing the muscle, or if you've ever seen an anatomy picture of the blood vessels in the face, I mean, there's just thousands and thousands of blood vessels in your face. If the Botox is injected incorrectly into a blood vessel directly, or there's, as I said in other videos, there's this, it's called toxin spread, like a distant toxin spread from the injection site. It seeps into your bloodstream, and then you likely will have symptoms of some degree. So just looking at my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, so the other thing that may happen is the toxin spread. The other thing that may happen is there could possibly be that small muscle gets overloaded. So it actually breaks down that muscle over time, and then there's an issue with absorption, so that Botox may actually leak out from the muscle into the bloodstream. So again, most of the time, and this is not meant to scare anybody, it's meant as information so that you can weigh this for yourself. You can use your own knowing and discernment to decide if you want to take that risk. It's totally a personal choice. And most of the time it is not a problem. But again, there's no way to anticipate if you will have a reaction. The other component too is that if you already have an autoimmune issue, and what happens is, if the Botox spread into the bloodstream, it triggers an immune response in the body. If you already have a autoimmune issue, again, you're more likely to experience some really negative side effects. So in particular with the autoimmune issue Guillain-Barré, because that's already an issue that affects the neuromuscular connection and nerves in the body. So again, there's some other ugly side to Botox that I want to bring up in this video. And aside from it, I just want to paint that picture of exactly what happens, what could happen, so that you have a true understanding of what's going on. Because again, this is detail that you have to dig for to understand or to know. So again, let's back it up a little bit and talk about the actual process that the manufacturer of Botox goes through to get an approval, and what that looks like from the FDA. Okay, if you are someone who takes stock in what the FDA approves. So 2/3 of Botox is used for off-label purposes. Okay, so that means that off-brand purpose, off-label purpose, is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United States is not approved by the FDA. 2/3 of what Botox is used in the United Sta is off-label. So this is a marketing strategy from Allergan to begin with, where they were approved for narrow usages and then aggressively marketed it for off-brand use. Okay, and they have actually paid big fines. Well, not big to them, but millions of dollars in fines for this strategy. So the system is pretty flawed. There are 3,500 people approximately in Allergan's marketing department, and 4 in their safety department. They, have a very effective strategy for convincing the public, convincing doctors and injectors and everyone that this is safe and, acceptable for, commonplace usage. More and more and more. You see this, if you listen to your TV, if you have your TV on, you'll see that it's marketed for, all kinds of other things aside from just cosmetic use. So one of the other mentionables about that I found fascinating, you may have listened to my previous videos and story, and part of my strategy was I was only going to ask for a natural amount, right? Like, give me the lowest dose possible. So I went and got my records, and I can see where initially it was, I think, 12 units, which is a very small amount. Well, over the course of getting Botox every, I think I was going like every quarter, like 4 months or so for 3 years. I progressed up to 28 units. So according to Ray Chester in the, the podcast that I'm referencing in this video, he indicated that up to 20 units is actually the FDA approved amount in the face. So for those that are getting typical Botox injections, the average number of units is actually between 50 and 60 in the face. So there is disconnects going on around here, right? This is just not adding up. It's like and I experienced this, and this is how I began to progress in the amount that I was getting, is that it's just, you start to get used to, and you want more, or you want it to be used in a different area, and it just gets out of hand, right? So that is really what I wanted to cover in this video, but I do want to elaborate, and I think I'm going to do this in another video, about a very interesting discovery that I found about how the Botox molecule actually mimics the thyroid tissue and the thyroid molecules in our body. So there can be this issue with Botox skewing thyroid test results and masking thyroid issues. So I want to talk about that in a future video. Probably going to be about 5 videos in this series, and the other video I'm going to do is just an update on, I am almost 3 years out from my last injection, and I just want to give you guys a picture of what I still am experiencing in my body and in my overall well-being from this experience. I just want to kind of check in, do a little health update, if you will, because I gave you all of the details of the symptoms that affected me the most initially, and I am doing a lot better, but I do still have some symptoms and some things that I'm working through, and I want to talk about that in the next video. So thank you guys for watching, and again, I'm going to give you guys that podcast so that you can check that out yourself.